Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for our invocation by Installation Chaplain Scott Hammond and remain standing for our national anthem.
It sure is an honor to pray with you on this day of great achievement. Please pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, the wisdom of Solomon encourages us to trust in the Lord with all of our hearts and all of our ways to acknowledge Him, and He will make our paths straight. So we pause to acknowledge you in all of our ways today and to seek your blessings on our retirement ceremony and continued blessings on our retirees and their loved ones. We give thanks to you for their selfless service and untiring devotion to duty to our nation and to the world at large. Bless their loved ones who have stood beside their soldiers sacrificially, maintaining their homes of refuge through countless moves, training separations, and combat deployments. As these families begin a new chapter in their lives, grant them success in their future endeavors, and enrich them with the joys and blessings and the fulfillments they so richly deserve. Just as you have watched over them in the past, providing for them and protecting them, we confidently trust in you to watch over them to make their paths straight, filled with your greatest blessings. May you hold them in the palm of your hands as new adventures unfold. May your blessings rest upon these families, our Fort Polk family, and the United States of America. These things we pray together in your holy name. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, on behalf of Brigadier General David S. Doyle, Commander of the Joint Readiness Training Center in Fort Polk, good afternoon and welcome to the August 2021 retirement ceremony. Today, we bid farewell to these soldiers who retire after many years of faithful service to the United States of America. We also recognize the families of these soldiers who have earned appreciation for their own faithful, unselfish, and devoted service. As a token of gratitude, each spouse will receive a flower from AUSA, a certificate of appreciation from the Army Chief of Staff, a letter of appreciation from Brigadier General and Mrs. Doyle, and their children and guests accompanying them will receive an American flag lapel pin from Geico. The Joint Readiness Training Center and Fort Polk are hosting our ceremony, and Brigadier General David S. Doyle, Commander of the Joint Readiness Training Center and Fort Polk, is our guest speaker and presenter of awards. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screen and enjoy this short video of our retirees in action. Ladies and gentlemen, Brigadier General Doyle.
There's some young faces on that video. I don't know if I recognize them all, but I'm going to give you credit for being the people in that. That was fantastic. Thanks for submitting that. And thanks for taking us through the history of the United States Army over the last 20 plus years. So commanders, command sergeants major, retirees, families, and friends, thank you for joining us today or joining us online as we celebrate the dedication and the service of these exceptional soldiers and thank them for their remarkable careers and contributions to the Army and to our nation. First, I want to thank the retirees who are here. These distinguished individuals have allowed me to participate in this retirement ceremony. Our JRTC and Fort Polk team is honored to be part of this last act of your final duty to the United States Army. These leaders that you see here are our finest veterans. They entered the Army at a time when we were on the cusp of continuous conflict, and they willfully chose to stay in our Army faithfully as it deployed, fought, and won. Together, these leaders have served our nation for a total of 125 years. They have served throughout the Army and all over the world at places like Fort Drum, New York, Joint Base Balad in Iraq, Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and the United States Military Academy at West Point. Some all made it all the way to the West Coast at Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington. As they conclude their 20 years of service, they will be settling in unique and distinct locations, some spectacular, like Miramar Beach, Florida, the thriving Columbia, South Carolina, and the absolute magnificent Fort Polk, Louisiana. All these retirees have served in critical leadership positions in peacetime and contributed during combat operations in duty positions that included squad leader, section sergeant, platoon sergeant, first sergeant, recruiter, drill sergeant, G3 air officer, observer coach trainer, and command sergeant major. They have forged their identity as wartime heroes, veterans deployed to conflict more than 37 times, beginning in 2002, and some who have returned as recently as 2018. These volunteer soldiers have fought longer than any other generation in our Army and have written their own chapter in American history. Our nation owes you a debt of gratitude, and we are thankful for your service and now your status as retirees. So retirees, that's a new mantle. Retirement, that's a new phase. When you hear the word retirement, what comes to mind? Is it the closing of one chapter and the opening of another? Some might call retirement the best days of your life. Webster's defines retirement as the action or act of leaving one's job and ceasing to work, or the period of one's life after leaving one's job and ceasing to work. I think we each have a slightly different view of what retirement is or what it may be. And at some point in our careers, 20 to 30 years of service, we begin that transition into our second or third act if you were in the United States Marine Corps. But the vision of an ideal retirement is different from person to person. So I decided to ask our retirees their definitions of retirement. Here's what they shared. Retirement to me means having fulfilled an obligation to protect and defend the United States of America and its citizens. Retirement to me just means closing one chapter of my life and starting a new one and trying to decide what job or career I'm going to search for. I will miss belonging to something bigger than myself, and I will be trying to find something to fill that void. Another one of our retirees said, "This is one of my biggest accomplishments in my entire life. I'm somewhat sad because I've been a soldier my entire adult life, but somewhat excited because I'll be able to spend quality time with my family. They lost a lot of time, and I intend to repay that back, all of that debt. I'm also excited because my son just joined the United States Army and will carry on the family tradition. Our family has served in every conflict since World War I. Another retiree said, "My definition of retirement is sleeping in and spending time with my family, and I will not shave for a month." And finally, one of our retirees said, "I've always envisioned retirement as an opportunity to learn something new and possibly serve my country in a different way." As you can see, retirement has different meanings, various for each one of you. But what I would say is common to all is that retirement represents a successful and honorable completion of your military career. So following your service to the country, you will leave the camouflage uniform of the United States Army and rejoin communities all over the United States. You will still provide service to our nation in different communities, taking your values of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage and delivering it to a new audience. These retirees will become Little League coaches, teachers in the schools, members of the city government, police officers, firemen, and neighbors lending a hand to other soldiers and families. Despite these new roles and these new communities, these retirees will remain members of the strongest, most dedicated family in the entire world. They will retain their status as part of the Army family. And now, speaking of families, I'd like to conclude my remarks by thanking all the families who are here or those who are watching online. Today, as we honor these retirees in uniform, your sacrifice, your service, your love of this country deserves recognition as well. You, as the loved ones who supported your retirees, are as important as anyone else, spouses, children, and parents. You serve your country too, but in ways that are too often overlooked. I read an article not too long ago that explained that many military families will say goodbye to more people in the time their soldier is serving than the average person meets in their entire lifetime. That experience means you've made multiple household moves, you've attended different schools, you've supported your loved ones through deployments, training exercises, and you celebrated birthdays, proms, anniversaries, and graduations without their presence. But I know, despite these challenges, each one of you has found a way to contribute to the well-being of other Army families in unique and distinct ways. I know you remember the incredible journeys and the unique experiences that only an Army family can understand. Promotion ceremonies, military graduations, awards presentations, and yes, even memorial ceremonies. So to the families here today and those who are watching online, I thank you. I commend you for your service to our nation, and I'd like us to give a round of applause for your dedication to the United States Army. So in conclusion, retirees and families, you've both earned the respect of a grateful nation. You've both forged the warrior spirit. You've always placed people first. Thank you for your dedication and your faithful service to our nation. Best wishes and Godspeed. All the way, winning matters, people first.
And our August retirees are Chief Warrant Officer 4, Eric Christian. Chief Eric Christian has stood alongside his commanders and soldiers on assignments handed to him during the past 25 years. His career is a shining example of devotion to duty and concern for the welfare of soldiers. Chief Warrant Officer 4, Eric Christian, 1st Battalion, 5th Aviation Regiment, is hereby awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, culminating an impressive career as an OH-58 Delta helicopter pilot. He also receives a Certificate of Appreciation from our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, a Certificate of Appreciation signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army, Secretary of the Army, and Sergeant Major of the Army, a Certificate of Retirement signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army. Chief Christian also receives a retiree lapel pin. His wife Shayna receives a Certificate of Appreciation from the Army Chief of Staff, a letter of appreciation from Brigadier General and Mrs. Doyle, and a flower. After retirement, he's going to move to Missouri, where he has accepted a job as a civilian medevac pilot. Staff Sergeant Troy Walters, whom is an Audie Murphy member, will present Chief Christian with his U.S. retirement flag. Our nation proudly honors Chief Warrant Officer 4 Eric Christian and family, United States Army, retired. Command Sergeant Major Christopher Osborne. Today, Command Sergeant Major Osborne reaches the end of his military career, having set high standards for the soldiers he has trained and led. An exemplary non-commissioned officer, his respected career of 23 years denotes marks of technical expertise and devotion to duty. Command Sergeant Major Christopher Osborne, United States Army Garrison, MCOM Readiness, is hereby awarded the Legion of Merit, culminating as a Cavalry Scout. He also receives a certificate of appreciation from our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, a certificate of appreciation signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army, Secretary of the Army, and Sergeant Major of the Army, a certificate of retirement signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army. Command Sergeant Major Osborne also receives a retiree lapel pin. After retirement, he's going to win therapy on his Harley and work for the city of Leesville. His wife Jennifer receives a certificate of appreciation from the Army Chief of Staff, a letter of appreciation from Brigadier General and Mrs. Doyle, and a flower. His son Anthony and daughter Ariana also accompany him on stage. Command Sergeant Major Osborne is now being presented his U.S. retirement flag from Brigadier General Doyle. Our nation proudly honors Command Sergeant Major Christopher Osborne, United States Army, retired. First Sergeant Juan Heredia. First Sergeant Juan Heredia has stood alongside his commanders and soldiers on assignments handed to him over the past 20 years. His career is a shining example of devotion to duty and concern for the welfare of soldiers. First Sergeant Juan Heredia, Operations Group, Joint Readiness Training Center, is hereby awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, culminating an impressive career as a Chief Intelligence Sergeant. He also receives a certificate of appreciation from our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, a certificate of appreciation signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army, Secretary of the Army, and Sergeant Major of the Army, a certificate of retirement signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army. First Sergeant Heredia also receives a retiree lapel pin. After retirement, he is going to move back to his home in Destin, Florida. He plans to just relax, paddleboard, hang out with his two dogs, Marley and Duke, and will now have the time to invest for himself instead of paying someone else to do it for him. First Sergeant Heredia is now being presented his U.S. retirement flag. Our nation proudly honors First Sergeant Juan Heredia, United States Army, retired. Sergeant First Class Daniel Becker. Today, Sergeant First Class Daniel Becker closes out 20 years of committed service to the United States Army. His never-ending concern, dedication, and devotion to soldiers has marked him as an exemplary non-commissioned officer, true to the NCO creed and the Army institution. Sergeant First Class Daniel Becker, Operations Group, Joint Readiness Training Center, is hereby awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, culminating an impressive career as an infantryman. He also receives a certificate of appreciation from our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States. A certificate of appreciation signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army, Secretary of the Army, and Sergeant Major of the Army. A certificate of retirement signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army. Sergeant First Class Becker also receives a retiree lapel pin. After retirement, he's going to continue to pursue a bachelor's degree in computer information systems. Sergeant First Class Becker is now being presented his U.S. retirement flag. Our nation proudly honors Sergeant First Class Daniel Becker, United States Army, retired. Sergeant First Class Michael Mitchell. Today, Sergeant First Class Michael Mitchell closes out a total of 20 years of committed service to the United States Army. His never-ending concern, dedication, and devotion to soldiers has marked him as an exemplary non-commissioned officer, true to the creed of the NCO Corps and the Army institution. Sergeant First Class Michael Mitchell, Operations Group, Joint Readiness Training Center, is hereby awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, culminating an impressive career as an infantryman. He also receives a certificate of appreciation from our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States. A certificate of appreciation signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army, Secretary of the Army, and Sergeant Major of the Army. A certificate of retirement signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army. Sergeant First Class Mitchell is also presented a retiree lapel pin. He is joined on stage by his mother, Barbie Mitchell. After retirement, he's going to attend an Airstreams Renewable Certification course from October to December and move into the field of renewable energy. Sergeant First Class Mitchell is now being presented his U.S. retirement flag by his mother, Barbie Mitchell. Our nation proudly honors Sergeant First Class Michael Mitchell, United States Army, retired. Staff Sergeant Jerry Mitchell. Today, Staff Sergeant Jerry Mitchell reaches the end of his military career, having set high standards for the soldiers he has trained and led. An exemplary non-commissioned officer, his respected career of 20 years denotes marks of technical expertise and devotion to duty. Staff Sergeant Jerry Mitchell, 3rd Battalion, 353rd Regiment, Security Force Assistance Command, is hereby awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, culminating an impressive career as a former United States Marine and a U.S. Army infantryman. He also receives a certificate of appreciation from our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, a certificate of appreciation signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army, Secretary of the Army, and Sergeant Major of the Army, a certificate of retirement signed by the Chief of Staff of the Army. Staff Sergeant Mitchell also receives a retiree lapel pin. His wife Melanie receives a certificate of appreciation from the Army Chief of Staff, a letter of appreciation from Brigadier General and Mrs. Doyle, and a flower. His son Garrett also accompanies him on stage. After retirement, he's planning on staying in DeRidder and waiting for the perfect job to come along. Staff Sergeant Mitchell is now being presented his U.S. retirement flag by his son, Garrett Mitchell. Our nation proudly honors Staff Sergeant Jerry Mitchell and family, United States Army, retired. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and give our retirees another round of applause as they present themselves in a final formation. And remain standing for the playing of the retirement medley and the Army song. The words are printed in your program. Congratulations, retirees. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. Have a great Team Polk Day.